Hello everyone, this is Rose Ramandi and welcome back to my podcast. Today I'm going to talk to you about prayer. Actually, a few days ago, I was just studying John chapter 16 and I was just going through some verses that Jesus was talking about, and something opened up for me that I felt literally that this, heavy burdens are falling off of my shoulders, and it just felt so amazing and so comforting, because usually when it comes to the concept of prayer, we think that, okay, now I have to go into this prayer and request God, and then I have to have faith. And somehow I found out in my personal journey, I don't know if that has happened to you or not, but I realized that sometimes prayer is like a work, it's something that, like you feel like, okay, now you make a decision to do the prayer, and now you're waiting for the answer and you're believing for the answer. And it feels sometimes it's a work, right? I don't know if you understand what I'm talking about, but sometimes it feels like, okay, it's a decision that I have to make in order to pray, and then come to a place of then receiving, and now we're going to try to believe, and then this whole thing is just like something we are trying to happen. But when I was reading John chapter 16 the other day, I realized that, okay, it's something amazing opened up. Okay, I don't want to be ahead of myself and tell you what I realized before I show you the scriptures. So let me show you the scriptures first. John chapter 16, Jesus is talking about his departure. Okay, he keeps telling them, and then he talks to the disciples, and the disciples are really upset about it because he says, I'm going away, right? But somehow they don't listen the other part that he says, I'm coming back again. Like, for example, look at verse 16 in John chapter 16. If you have your Bible, look at it. Otherwise, I can read it for you here. So Jesus is talking in John chapter 16 verse 16, and he says, a little while and you will not see me, and again a little while and you will see me, because I go to the Father. So do you see, he's talking about some kind of a little while that you're not going to see me, Jesus says, but a little while you will see me. So two things here to consider. There is a little while, and there's also a time that you don't see, and the time that you will see me again. So Jesus is talking about, like, you don't see me, now you see me. But look at this here. Look at verse 17. It says, and when some of his disciples said among themselves, what is this that he says to us? A little while you will not see me, and again a little while you will see me, and because I go to the Father. So obviously they didn't understand what Jesus is talking about, right? So I remember when I was reading these verses, I go, okay, this is clear what Jesus is talking about. Why are they having a hard time understanding this? And then years later, when I started understanding the true coming of Jesus, which we are going to see just like a drop of it today, when I started to understand that, then I realized now why they are not basically understanding here what Jesus is talking about. So because like those scriptures are mostly in the church have been interpreted as, okay, Jesus went to the Father and now we're going to wait for him one day in the future. It's been 2,000 years. He hasn't come back yet, but one day in the future he's going to show up and he's going to come, right? And that's the definition of those verses that are being told or taught in the Gospels. But today we're going to see Jesus is going to link his coming into the answer of a prayer. All right, so I just got ahead of myself, but I think I have to tell you this right in the beginning. He is now, by the time we get to verse 24, it's just for us, it's verses. For Jesus talking, it's maybe a minute of talking, right? So he is building up some kind of concept and understanding. And by the time he gets to verse 24, he's talking about the answers to prayer, okay? So now he's linking his coming, or you will see me, to an answer into a prayer. And I think this is amazing. You're going to see this clearly as I open up the scriptures here for you, all right? So now, then Jesus says, verse 18. Okay, let me read verse 18. They said, therefore, what is this that he says a little while? We do not know what he is saying, right? So now pay attention to this. Like Jesus is talking about a little while. Now, if you want to look at the traditional understanding of the message of the end times, the 2,000 years is not a little while, right? So it's been, but some of you might say, for God it is so. But we are not talking about God waiting for Jesus to come back. We are waiting. The disciples, Jesus is talking to the disciples that you, for a little while, are not going to see me, and a little while you will be seeing me. And if this message, if what Jesus talking here is referring to 2,000, 3,000 years later, then why is he making the fool out of these disciples, telling him or promising him something that he couldn't deliver? Just think about it. If Jesus really meant here that he's coming back in about 2,000 or 2,000 some years later, which he hasn't come yet according to the traditional message, then when Jesus is telling the disciples then 2,000 years ago, that means this message that Jesus is telling them, it's not for them, and he's kind of giving them a false hope, right? So he's talking to these people and he's telling them that in a little while you will see me. But I know some of you might say, okay, everything Jesus told the disciple is for us as well, right? So, and that's true. But here's the thing, everything, it was for them and it is for us at the same time. God doesn't show partiality to some group of people. He doesn't promise to someone and then it says, oh, you know what, I didn't mean really you, I really meant maybe 2,000 years, some just group of people, like a small group of people that you're not going to see them, but I'm talking to them. So whatever I'm telling you, don't take it to heart, because I'm not talking to you about these things. No, Jesus is actually exactly talking to these people. What he's saying a little while is going to apply for Peter, John, and the disciples at that time, and as much as it's going to apply for me 2,000 years later, or someone 1,000 years ago, or someone 50 years from now, or 100 years from now. It's going to apply to everyone, right? So now Jesus knows that they don't understand this concept of a little while. Now, look at verse 19. It says, now Jesus knew that they desired to ask him, and he said to them, are you inquiring among yourselves about what I said? A little while and you will not see me, and a little while and you will see me. So do you see? Jesus says, okay, now, so you guys are just talking among yourself and asking about this. Are you inquiring about this thing that I said? So obviously, if Jesus brings up this issue here or this confusion, therefore, he's going to help them to understand what Jesus is talking about, right? Because they didn't understand what he's talking about. So Jesus says, okay, are you guys like inquiring about this? Do you have questions? Okay, let me basically help you to understand. So whatever Jesus is now going to say from verse 20 all the way to verse 24 is toward helping them to understand what does it mean that for a little while you will not see me and a little while you will see me. All right, are you guys following me? Hopefully you do, and hopefully you have your Bible. But I know sometimes maybe you're driving, cleaning, or doing things and you don't have your Bible and you're just listening to this, which is awesome. That's why I am reading the scriptures here for you. So now, look at what Jesus said in verse 20. He's now helping them. Most assuredly, I say to you that you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice, and you will be sorrowful, but your sorrow will be turned into joy. I mean, like, come on. So, if you really look at it naturally, you will weep and lament. Jesus is making things worse. But he's talking about something amazing here, which we are going to find out. All right, so two things to consider in this verse. Here says that you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice. And then it says you will be sorrowful, but your sorrow will turn to joy. We don't have to really guess hard what Jesus is talking about here, because if you just read the previous verse, then you know that if Jesus says that you will weep and lament, or you will be sorrowful, he's most probably referring to that little while that you will not see me. Okay, did you just see? He's referring to that little while that he was talking about, and he said, little while you will not see me. So if you don't see me, then it's going to be the time of weeping and lamenting. All right, so now look at, and I understand sometimes those scriptures are interpreted is referring to Jesus going to the cross. They wept and lamented, and then Jesus showed up here for them. He was resurrected, and then their weeping turned into joy. And that can be part of a translation of these verses, because he was about to leave and to go to be crucified. But there must be something more in these verses, because by the time we get to 24, Jesus is talking about ask the Father, and he's talking about prayer. Okay, so keep that in mind. So what was Jesus telling those disciples? It's not only for the disciples, it's also for us years later. So did you see, we just looked at two different types of interpretation of the scriptures together so far. One type was referring all these verses to a future one day, and that means it has nothing to do with the disciples at the time. Another type of interpretation is referring only to the disciples at the time, because Jesus was going to the crucifixion, and it has nothing to do with me 2,000 years ago. Both of these interpretations are not accurate, because the word of God is alive, and the moment you step into the spirit of the living God, that's when you start understanding and realizing that everything that Jesus was saying, it was applicable to those, and it is available for me even today, and it is for me and is speaking to me and my situation today. So if Jesus was telling them that a little while you will not see me, that little while can apply to you and me today. And if he was saying that you will weep and lament, therefore that can apply to me today. All right, so now do you see here says you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice. I just want to put something in the bracket because it just popped into my mind. In Revelation chapter 15, Revelation chapter 4, John has seen the throne room, and then all of a sudden in chapter 5, he sees the scroll sitting on the throne, and then he sees the scroll is sealed, and somebody shouts and says, who is worthy to open the scroll? And then John looks on the heaven and earth and everywhere, and he sees no one worthy to open the scroll. So he starts weeping. Do you see? So John starts weeping, and all of a sudden somebody tells him, why are you weeping? Do not weep, for the Lion of the tribe of Judah has overcome. And then John says, I turned and I looked, and in the midst of the throne, and in the midst of the 24 living creatures, I saw a lamb standing, okay, as it was crucified, as it was a slave. So do you see, John was weeping, and then all of a sudden he saw, and then it was the beginning of the end of his weeping. So let me put it this way. So Jesus here says the same thing. He says you will weep and lament, because you, for a little while, this weeping and lamenting is for a little while. We're gonna understand what it is shortly. But weeping and lamenting is for a little while, because you do not see me, but you will see me soon. Now, Jesus is now helping them, bringing an example. You know how many times he's done that, right? He brings a natural example that we understand in order to open up something as spiritual, right? So now look at verse 21. It says, now he's giving an example, guys, here. A woman which she's in labor has sorrow. Okay, let's just wait here. Jesus just told the disciples that you will be sorrowful. And then now he's giving an example. It's like a woman who is in labor, she has sorrow. So therefore, what Jesus is saying, he says, you know what, when you don't see me, you are like that. You're like a woman who's in labor and is in sorrow. So do you see, it's helping them to understand what is this sorrowful and lamenting here, okay? So now keep that in mind. Therefore, the little while that Jesus is talking, it's that little while for the woman that is going through the birth, giving birth, right? Going through labor. So now let's read verse 21 again. A woman when she's in labor has sorrow because her hour has come. But as soon as she has given birth to a child, she no longer remembers the anguish for joy. Do you see? For joy that a human being has been born into the world. All right, so now verse 20 says you will be in sorrow. So now we understand what does it mean. That means you will be like a woman who is in labor, and the little while is that little while for the woman who is in labor. All right, but as soon as the woman is giving birth to a child, then she forgets that she was in that anguish, and she receives joy. So Jesus told them, you will be sorrowful, but your sorrow will turn to joy. So do you see? So therefore, Jesus is saying, you are that woman that will be in sorrow and weeping and lamenting because you are going to be in labor, giving birth to this child. That child, when the moment you see the child, then your sorrow will turn into joy. Okay, amazing, right? But now here's the thing. Jesus now in the next verse, he's interpreting what he just said and helping us to understand who is the child then. Now look at verse 22. It says, therefore, do you see? It says, therefore, he gave an example. Therefore, you now have sorrow. Oh, perfect. So Jesus is helping. You now have sorrow. You now are a woman in labor. That's why you have sorrow. But I will see you again, and your heart will rejoice. Now pay attention to this. Oh my goodness, this is the most powerful, life-giving, amazing revelation someone can have here. He says, I will see you again. But he's talking about a woman that is giving birth to a child, and the sorrow of a woman will turn into joy when the woman sees the child. So now Jesus says, therefore, you have a sorrow, but your sorrow will turn into rejoicing or joy when I will see you. Or let's put it this way. If you are the woman, then you'll see me when you will see me. Let's read verse 22 again. Therefore, you now have sorrow, but I will see you again, and your heart will rejoice, and your joy no one will take away from you. So therefore, in the message, if we turn into the spirit channel here, okay, if we turn our ears to the spirit, Jesus is saying, as a disciple and my student, you are a woman that is with a child, and you are in labor. Now you are in labor, and now you are about to giving birth, and your sorrow will turn to joy when you see the child, but your sorrow will turn to joy when you will see me. Then we can realize, therefore, that the child that Jesus is talking here is himself. What is he saying? He's saying that I'm putting my seed inside of you, and I'm producing myself in you. Right? So do you see, we are not talking about natural giving birth and all this stuff. We are talking about a spiritual mysteries of Jesus Christ here. We have to move on from natural understanding of the scriptures into a spiritual understanding of scriptures. Jesus says, you know what? I will be born out of you. Right? Do you this is I think the most powerful message of the gospel here. He says, you know what? I will be the one who's coming out of you. I will be the one who is hidden inside of you. But then it's gonna come the time that I'm gonna come out of you. Okay, so now let me just move on here. So these things will open up more. Now look at verse 23. So Jesus brought this example. So he helped them to understand what a little while is. He helped them to understand who is the woman and what does it mean to be sorrow and how is he going to see them. In a little while, you will not see me, but then you will see me and your joys will be complete. Now, he is now even opening up this more. By the time you think, okay, I got it, Jesus says, okay, let me just open up a little more. Look at verse 23. In that day, you will ask me nothing. Most assuredly, I say to you, whatever you ask the Father in my name, he will give it to you. Oh my goodness. Do you see here? He's now talking about asking the Father and receiving something from the Father. Wow. So do you see here? He brought the story of the woman and the, like the labor and see a little while, and all of a sudden he says, all these things I'm talking about asking, I'm talking about prayer. Now look at verse 24. It says, until now you have asked nothing in my name. Ask and you will receive, that your joy may be full. I think this makes the picture complete for us. He says, until now you have asked nothing. Ask and you will receive, and your joy may be full. So let's just wait here. In the story that Jesus said that the woman will receive joy when she sees the child that she just gave birth to. But now here Jesus is talking about that your joy may be full when you receive the answer to what you asked for. Wow. All right. So do you see what it says? Therefore, when you are in the time of asking, and you haven't received the answer to that asking, you are in like that woman who is in labor but hasn't seen the child yet. But the moment you receive the answer to your prayer, it's like you have seen the child you have given birth into. Oh wow. I think this is wonderful. I'm going to talk about this more and hopefully record a video showing with the pictures and everything to open up more scriptures. So now look at this. Therefore, Jesus in verse 24, now he wraps everything he's saying into the concept of the prayer and asking. Therefore, it says you have not asked anything, but ask and you will receive it. So do you know what it says? When you are in the time of asking, you are in a time like a woman who is in labor and giving birth, because you haven't received what you asked for, but you are perseverant, but you persevere through it. You know that you are about to receive the answer to your prayer, and that's when your joy is complete. So let me wrap up this with the most powerful thing that opened up for me and literally caused this, heavy weights to fall off of my shoulders, honestly. And look at that. When a woman is in labor, or let me put it this way, when a woman is pregnant, she doesn't just get up one day and says, okay, now it's time to give birth. And then she goes and she tries to give birth. That doesn't happen. What happens is that the woman, by the time she's in labor, she hasn't made any effort to give birth to the child. Her whole body is now ready to give birth, right? So she has the pain, the contractions or whatever that is happening in that moment. The brain is ready, the muscles, everything in this person this person knows that I'm ready to give birth now. And now, because the woman knows that the time has arrived, that's when she says, I have to push for the baby to come out, basically, right? So therefore, if you see the story, if you see it in the concept of prayer, when you find yourself going into asking, you're not just a pregnant woman deciding to give birth one day. You are asking because you realize the time for this birth, giving birth, has already started, and you are just participating in this process by just pushing and persevering, knowing that the time has arrived. Let me put it this way. A pregnant woman doesn't push for the baby to be born. A pregnant woman is pushing because the baby is about to be born. So now if you look at the prayer, that's the thing. You don't ask the prayer because you want the answer. You want to receive the answer to your prayer. You are asking because God has already started to answering your prayer. So you're just entering into that fellowship, into that cooperation, and you're just pushing to fulfill and perfect this process. Let me just repeat it again. This is what really opened up and really set me free. When you are asking, it's not you decided, now I gotta go ask and I gotta have my receive it. If that's the case, it's like you are pregnant and one day you decide, I need to push for the baby to come out. And that's not gonna happen. The baby's not gonna be born when you get to decide it. You have to wait until the time for the baby to be born arrives, and then you have to push, right? So now here's the thing. When you find yourself when you are entering into that season, you have a desire in your heart, and all of a sudden you are like asking in this prayer. It's like the process of answering your prayer has already begun, and you just know it, and you're just pushing through it by asking in the prayer. And I think this is so wonderful. The Father has already begun to answer your prayer, your request. And now, when you enter into this prayer, you know the time has come for the answer to be received. So therefore, I'm gonna pray, and I'm gonna push forward, and I'm gonna receive this amazing answer, basically answer to my prayer. And that doesn't mean that you're gonna sit and say, okay, the time is not right. The time is not right for me to receive. No. The time is not right for me to give birth to the child. No. Jesus just told them, now you are that woman in labor. You are not going to wait for the labor to happen. Now, Jesus said, now you are the woman in labor. And that means now, if you enter into asking, now you have to enter into asking. And now the moment you enter into asking, you gotta realize that you are a woman in labor, and the process of giving birth has already started. The process of receiving the answer to your prayer has already started. So Jesus didn't say you are a pregnant woman. You are a woman in a labor, and you are about to receive the answer to your prayer. So persevere through it. Know that you are about to receive it. God has already begun. He has done a hard work. Everything is completed and perfected, and you just need to realize now is the time to give birth, and I gotta push for this, and I gotta receive what I asked from the Father. I think this is a blessing to you, everyone. It was just life-giving for me, and hopefully it was for you. All right, everyone, if this teaching was a blessing for you, I just want to encourage you to share it with your friends and family, and let them also hear the message and get, receive the love of God in another level. And subscribe if you haven't subscribed, so as soon as I have a new podcast or episode out, then you'll be notified in your phone or in your device. Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll talk to you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of my podcast. To stay connected with me, join our mailing list at perfectedbyblood.com/sign up. By doing so, you'll not only receive immediate updates from me, but also grab a copy of the ebook called Unveiled Word, a simple guide to understand the Bible.